room of the White House as any moment now, President Trump and the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu set to address the American people, those in the Middle East, and around the world as a whole, as the two have been together now for about 2 hours or so here in Washington. The Israel-Hamas war, the ceasefire deal, and Iran, a part of the talks today. President Trump already warning Iran, if you try to take me out, they'll be taken down.
If that happens to a leader or close to a leader, frankly, if you had other people involved also, you would call for total obliteration of a state that did it. That would include Iran. So I'm signing this, and it's a very powerful document, but hopefully we're not going to have to use it.
All right. Hello. Good evening. Welcome to Washington. I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. Tonight, he's back on the world stage again. President Trump hosting his first foreign leader, the third week on the job, second term. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House right now. Live look inside the East Room. But in a wide-ranging Oval Office exchange with reporters before the Israeli Prime Minister got to the White House earlier today, the president also touted new ideas here at home. President Trump, for example, backing the potential elimination of the education department. This, he said, is his message to the possible head of that agency.
I told Linda, I hope you do a great job and put yourself out of a job. And what I want to do is let the states run schools. I believe strongly in school choice.
And the president today saying he's not sure it's legal, but he backs this concept. As El Salvador has agreed to house illegal immigrants deported out of the country, President Trump asked if he thinks that could happen with violent criminals who are American.
If we could get them out of our country, we have other countries that would take them. It's no different than a prison system, except it would be a lot less expensive, and it would be a great deterrent. If we had the legal right to do it, I would do it in a heartbeat.
Tonight, by the way, major movement as well for some of the president's top cabinet selections. Tulsi Gabbard, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Pam Bondi as well. Our Joe Khalil with where those nominations stand tonight. But first over to our Robert Sherman live at the White House inside the East Room with the very latest there. Robert, President Trump, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu speaking any moment now. They've been together for the last 2 hours or so. Lots of conversations about Israel, about Gaza, about the ceasefire, about a possible phase 2, and about Iran.
Yeah, no two ways about it, Blake. There's been a lot of anticipation for this meeting between these two heads of state today. And when you listen to what National Security Advisor Mike Walls had to say, they framed this as a very consequential discussion and a rather pivotal time in the landscape of the Middle East. With everything that has gone on in the last few months, what has happened with Hezbollah, what has happened with Iran, now all culminating in this ceasefire deal and where it stands right now. But there's also been widespread acknowledgement that while they believe it's an opportunistic landscape, it is also a very fragile one. And especially with you hearing the president's comments earlier today about talking about what the status of Palestinians in Gaza would be and possibly their relocation, it has certainly added to that greater conversation about this being a rather fragile landscape that you're looking at right now, as we're still just about midway through phase 1 of that ceasefire deal, and all eyes are focused on, do we get to phase 2, which would potentially entail talking about governance of Gaza on the other side of this war, potentially a full IDF withdrawal from the Gaza Strip. These are all the conversations that are so pivotal at this very current moment that we've heard from senior White House officials are supposed to be on the table to be discussed here today between these two world leaders, and quite frankly will play a large role in determining what the coming weeks and months look like throughout the whole region. Blake.
Our Robert Sherman live tonight at the White House. So let's keep this picture up for a second, because what we expect to play out here, and I use the word expect, is President Trump to speak, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to speak. And traditionally what happens here, and this was the case in the first Trump administration, you get 2 questions from American media, you get 2 questions from Israeli media. I say expected because, after all, this is the first time we are seeing this in term 2, how this all plays out. We don't know. We'll watch it together. As soon as it happens, we'll take you there live inside the White House. Also, by the way, a big step for two of the president's cabinet nominees today, two different Senate committees, advancing Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard's confirmations to a full vote on the Senate floor. And roughly an hour from now, the Senate will vote again. Our Joe Khalil is live inside the Capitol with more on what's happening there. Joe, you got a lot of movement today. RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard moving out of committee, and then Pam Bondi, a full Senate vote in about 55 minutes from now.
Yeah, Blake, last time we talked about all of these nominees, we talked about how RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard may have been the most in danger of these nominees. We also said don't underestimate the possibility of the Trump machine muscling these nominees through. That is apparently what happened over the course of the last couple of days. President Trump, Vice President Vance, they got on the phone with these senators several times. The nominees got on the phone and talked to these senators several times. They made promises, they secured commitments, we're told, and that ultimately is what made the difference. When we woke up today, we didn't know whether Senator Bill Cassidy, a key Republican, was going to ultimately vote for RFK Jr., or whether Senator Todd Young from Indiana, the Republican, was going to vote to advance Tulsi Gabbard. Both of them ultimately decided on doing so, voting with the party, advancing these nominees. Senator Cassidy said he was guaranteed unprecedented access to the Health and Human Services Secretary Kennedy should he win his nomination. So that's how it looked today, Blake. A good day for President Trump as his nominees advance. And while we don't know exactly yet if they will pass full Senate confirmation, those prospects look much better right now than they did literally 24 hours ago.
All right, our Joe K. live tonight up in the Capitol hallways. Joe, thank you. So as the president shares his plans today to potentially dismantle the Department of Education, he also acknowledged that the White House would have to work with Congress to get it done.
Yeah, I think I'd work with Congress. I think we'd have to work with the teachers union because the teachers union is the only one that's opposed to it.
Joining me now, Mick Mulvaney, NewsNation contributor, former chief of staff in the first Trump White House, and Dan Cannonen, Battleground States Director for the Biden and Harris campaigns. Hello to you both. Thanks for being here.
Hello, Berman.
We think we're going to get a lot of news here coming up, and there was a lot of news before these two even met.
I got 614 on the over-under, right? You guys got the over on 614?
I got the over.
I said it.
I got the under.
At 6:14:59.
Oh,
see what plays out here.
He wants the 6 o'clock hour before the first.
So before these two met earlier this afternoon, there was that, I don't know, 20, 30 minute or so, Mick, back and forth with reporters in the Oval. And the president said, look, I want to get rid of the Department of Education. But he did acknowledge there's going to be some challenges.
Oh, sure. I don't think anybody thinks he can do it by himself. There's certain things an executive can do. But if you're really going to get rid of an agency, you'd need a vote in the Senate. And that's not a reconciliation vote with 50 votes. That is a full-blown vote in the Senate with 60 votes.
Right.
It's never going to happen. So the question becomes then, how can you retool and reform the Department of Education to make it look more like what you want without having it go away permanently?
I think Elon Musk thinks he can do this by himself, but he's wrong. Same with USAID. They can't do that without Congress as well.
I'm sorry to interrupt. That USAID was created by an executive order.
But it was codified in 1998 by an act of Congress, and it's past the point of reorganization. They cannot do that without an act of Congress.
As we look at the live images right now, the president and the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Dan, this is obviously a changing of the guard. This was the first foreign leader that President Trump had over at the White House. The White House today and the message that they've put out, what do you think they're trying to get out of this moment right now?
I'm a little worried. I want to give the Trump team some credit. I think that the deal on the hostages would not have been done without Trump. I give the Biden team credit, too, for getting it to where it was, and then Trump got over the goal line. And now he has this opportunity that Robert Sherman mentioned. It is tenuous, it's fragile, but there is a great opportunity to cut a deal here that involves Iran, and a deal involves normalization with Saudi Arabia and Israel, which would have to involve a pathway to citizenship, for a statehood for the Palestinian people. And if all that were to happen, there could really be a lasting peace, and you get through phase 2, and this would be an incredible moment. But this plan to try to move 2 million people out of Gaza into countries that don't want them, that does not appear to have a pathway to statehood, is not going to fly with Hamas, not going to fly with the Saudis, and I think threatens the entire thing. So I'm worried that he's going to overshoot here and miss this very important opportunity.
Middle East incredibly complex, to keep it very basic here.
It's really tough. Where do they go? I mean, because they can't stay there, right? At least not all of them. The place has been literally destroyed. It's not going to be fit for human habitation for a while. Yes, you could do a couple things temporarily, but it's going to be 10 years maybe before Gaza is back to where it was before the war. So it is a really difficult situation.
Take me real quick, Mick, behind the relationship between the president and Benjamin Netanyahu, because you had a front row visit to all of this.
Yeah, everyone's talking about the presser that Trump did earlier this afternoon. What I wanted to see was the first conversation. I didn't realize till I was doing some research today, they went 4 years without speaking. Trump was really, really upset with Netanyahu, that Netanyahu acknowledged that Biden won the 2020 election. It was one of the first foreign leaders, if not, I think, the first foreign leader to call Biden to congratulate.
Yeah, he was at the very beginning.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And I think there had to be, this is the first time it's not the first time they've spoken, the first time they've seen each other. That would be the conversation I want to see much more than a press conference.
All right, quick break here. Live look over at the White House. The president, the Israeli prime minister, both set to speak. And then, we believe, take questions after. We'll take you back to the White House live, other side of the break.
Is there enough space there to accommodate?
There's a lot of space to accommodate a lot of people, so we're going to use it.
President Trump earlier this afternoon describing how the White House is now flying thousands of illegal immigrants to Guantanamo Bay. That change in policy in the Trump administration could lead to roughly 30,000 migrants at the U.S. Navy facility located in Cuba. And along the southern border tonight, a NewsNation exclusive, weaponized drones in action. Drug cartels using the sophisticated and dangerous drones against each other. Our Allie Bradley, the first to break this story. She joins us live from Del Rio, Texas with an exclusive look. Allie, before I toss it over to you, I should note the president and the prime minister, any moment now when that happens, we'll dip in. But this video that you got, a NewsNation exclusive tonight.
Yeah, so Blake, down here, the energy, we've talked about the morale shifting a lot, but now the energy is shifting to this kind of like heightened alert for law enforcement down here following the authorization of those weaponized drones. And full disclosure, I've been covering this for nearly 4 years. Never really felt unsafe that I needed protective gear. And yeah, now I've got a bulletproof vest down here for me and my team because we don't know what we're going to encounter. We don't know how the cartel is going to be operating. So check out this video that we were able to obtain through our sources that shows these bomb-wielding drones in action. So this drone literally goes over top of these vehicles. It's a convoy of vehicles you can see right there. And you can quite literally see a bomb drop from this drone and actually make contact down there. And what we've learned here is they believe that this is cartel on cartel fighting there. And that's what the concern is, that fighting is going to spill over into the United States. Blake, right now, they're not able to make that $13 billion they were making by moving people into the country illegally because those numbers have plummeted. A 75% decrease down here at the border. So how are they making money? So they're operating in these unprecedented ways like what we're seeing right there on the screen. It's just a couple hours south from where we're standing here. And then you consider what happened in August. We actually reported that on the other side of Arizona, they had bomb-wielding drones over there, but they weren't necessarily threatening agencies on this side, Blake. So they're looking at, head on a swivel right now, continuing to pray for the agents and officers down here because we don't know what we're going to see down here, Blake.
Wow. Our Allie Bradley live for us tonight with that exclusive video here on NewsNation. Incredible. Allie, thank you. Joining me now is the Republican Congressman of Texas, Brian Babin. He is the co-chair of the Border Security Caucus. Congressman, thanks for being with us tonight here on the Hill. Let me just let you know right off the top, if I have to jump in, we're expecting the president any moment now, but appreciate your time, sir.
You bet. Great to be with you.
So you might have heard Allie Bradley there at the border on these weaponized drones, and as Allie reports, it could spill over into the United States. What happens next? What's your worry? What's your big fear, Congressman?
Well, my fear is that the cartels are going to do something very stupid because they're playing with a whole different there's a new cop on the block. President Trump is not President Biden, and he's not going to put up with it. Somebody's going to get hurt real bad, and I have a feeling it's going to wind up being some of these cartels. They would be insane to try to pull something like this with weaponized drones, targeting our Border Patrol, our National Guard troops, etc. They're going to be treated like the enemy that they are. 100,000 Americans each year are dying of overdoses coming across our border with the cartels. Human trafficking, child sex trade. It's really so horrible you can hardly contemplate it. And now we've got a president that is willing to do something about it and back it up with force. And the first thing he did was to designate these cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. It's about time. Thank you, Mr. President, for doing that. They will pay a very steep and heavy price if they start using violence against our people.
A live look inside the East Room, some of the top dignitaries walking into the room, so we believe the president and the prime minister are moments away. Do you think, Congressman, it gets to the point where drones from the United States are used against the cartels?
It certainly could. I'm not saying it will. We know where a lot of these drug labs are. We know where a lot of these bad guys live. And it could come down to that. You know, if you're a foreign terrorist organization and you're designated as such, then I'm going to tell you, all's fair. All is fair. Everything's on the table. And we could absolutely take that type of action against them to save American lives, to save our property, to save our sovereignty. What we've seen for 4 years, they've made billions and billions of dollars off of the misery of people from 150 different countries around the world, but especially American citizens. And that time is now stopping.
Congressman, as I believe we're a couple minutes or getting close to it away from this press conference with President Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, what do you want to hear out of the president tonight as it relates to the Middle East, the Israel-Hamas war, the hostage deal, and what do you think the president should say to the American people and to the Middle East tonight?
I think the president needs to say just what he's been saying. He's working a deal. We're going to get these hostages released. The Iranians are going to be put on notice that they better watch out. Hamas and other proxy fighters for the Iranian regime. I think they know that Netanyahu and Donald Trump they mean business, and we mean to have this thing settled. And so I'm looking forward to hearing those types of conversations when we hear from them in a second.
Congressman Brian Babin, I have to leave it there on a night when we can talk more. I hope you come on back, but thank you for joining us tonight here on the Hill. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely.
So
good to be with you. Thank you.
You as well. Thanks for being here. So here's what we're going to do. Live pictures of the White House. You saw some of the dignitaries there walk in. It's been my experience in the first Trump administration that when that happens, it normally means we're a few minutes out. So we're going to take a quick commercial break here. We'll keep the live pictures up. And if the president walks out during the commercial break, we'll take you there live. Stay with us. Welcome back to Washington. This is The Hill on NewsNation, 627 here in our nation's capital, and a live look inside the East Room as we believe that we are moments away from the press conference between the President of the United States, Donald Trump, and the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. We just saw the Defense Secretary, the top two envoys to the Middle East, the Treasury Secretary walk into the East Room, giving us a sense that this press conference between the two is likely just minutes away. The President and the Israeli Prime Minister meeting together, or at least been with each other inside the White House for the better part of about 2 hours and 15 minutes. The conversation's likely dealing with the ongoing war and the ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas, how to take on, challenge Iran at this point, and what that all looks like, along with a host of other issues in and around the region. Joining me now as we await the president, Mick Mulvaney, former Trump White House chief of staff, Dan Cannonen, former Battleground States director for the Biden-Harris campaigns. There is a lot, Dan, at stake here for the leader of the free world and the leader of Israel.
And I think all of us who watch this want this to be successful at this point. I mean, we want the hostages to come home. We want the ceasefire to become permanent. We want a solution that can be enduring in this region. I am worried that this fragile opportunity is going to be missed by the Trump folks, but he has an opportunity, if he takes it, to create something that could put us on a better path.
We're looking there at Pete Hegseth, the Defense Secretary Morgan Ortagus, the Deputy Special Envoy to the Middle East, Scott Bessent there with his back toward us. That's, again, the president's team there giving us the hint that this is moments away. Mick, you have been in many of these meetings, including with these two.
Yeah, and I'll be watching. I agree with everything Dan just said. I'm looking to another aspect of this, another wrinkle, sort of another dimension. What's the interpersonal relationship? Trump prefers to deal with people and deals better with people that he likes. I go back to the example of Shinzo Abe, just somebody he got along really, really well with, yet he graded at working with people like Macron and Trudeau in Canada. So I'd be curious to see what the personal interaction is between these two gentlemen. If it's good, I think that bodes very well for what Dan was talking about. If there's a little bit of tension, then I get a little bit more worried. So I'll be looking for that aspect of this relationship as much as a discussion about the merits.
How much do you think we will hear from President Trump about the pathway forward and what this could look like?
You know,
because he's talking about
the generic answer to how much you're going to hear from Trump is a lot. I mean, because just again, in the introduction, you said he gave a wide-ranging, impromptu Oval Office conversation. We could just print that up every night for the next 4 years. So the default setting is he's going to give more details, not less. But I'm not sure there's enough to talk about yet to sort of fill it. He may actually come out tonight in a rare case say we're still working on it.
Probably that's the case. I also looked, Mick, to your point about how his disposition will be with Bibi, is how it is in general here. Because he has been in this wrecking ball mode with Elon Musk being his wrecking ball for the most part. And I wouldn't say it's been a scalpel to the federal government. It's been a very explosive first 3 weeks, to say the least. You can't take that approach in the Middle East. And I'm wondering here if there is any measure of reserve and careful choosing of words. That's not his style, obviously. But in this moment, when there is so much at stake, I wonder if we'll see some of that.
A good point. And to that point, I'll be curious to see, because he can do that. He can do that nuance. He can do that scalpel. He's better at it when it's pre-printed. So I'll be curious to see if he reads from a prepared statement tonight or if he wings it.
All right. Our eyes, as they remain on the East Room, a pretty big story in its own right, which on any other normal day might be story number one, because the tariff war, if you want to call it that, continues. There are
Did you just use the word normal day? Seriously?
I don't know what that looks like, but going forward, at least, there are questions surrounding the United States' relationship with China. President Trump reacted to China's retaliatory tariffs earlier today.
It's fine. We're going to do very well against China and against everybody else. Right now, they've taken advantage of the Biden administration like I've never seen.
All right, so this is just the beginning, at least in term two. Here's what happened so far. The president has placed and paused 25% tariffs on Mexican and Canadian goods, but has placed 10% tariffs on Chinese goods. Mexico is our top trading partner. Canada coming in second, China in third, each making up more than 10% of total foreign trade. Companies and businesses across the world bracing for impact. Joining me now is Ryan Peterson. He is the CEO of Flexport, a supply chain logistics platform. When I tell you there was one person I wanted to hear from on this, it is the man on your screen, Ryan Peterson. Thanks for being back with us, Ryan. If we have to break away, I know you understand, but tell me what you're seeing tonight as it relates to China, these tariffs, and how businesses are reacting.
Yeah, great. Obviously, I understand we got to hear from the president if he comes out and speaks.
Yeah.
So what we saw last night at midnight Eastern time was that you had a 10% increase in duties on goods coming from China. That's a big deal. That's on top of all the other duties that have been layered onto those goods over the previous years. But maybe an even bigger deal was the elimination of what's called the de minimis exemption.
Yeah. Explain that.
That says that goods that are less than $800 in value, if they're shipped to an end consumer, that's me and you, then there's no duty at all that's paid. And that's been the law of the land for a long time. And that's now going away if the goods are made in China. And that's a huge percentage of goods flows these days for consumer goods. You have major Chinese e-commerce brands that have become sort of titans of the world of e-commerce in the last few years. But also lots of smaller businesses are using this exemption to ship goods out of Mexico. They're made in China, but they ship them to Mexico by ocean freight and then ship them one at a time and avoid duties. So they've eliminated that. at least for goods from China. So it's a really big deal in the supply chain world.
I don't want to name specific companies, obviously, because the world is a really big place. But is this the Amazons, the Etsy's, when you buy things that are shipped in from China for $25, $50, $100, whatever it is, under $800, the cost on those items could potentially start going up?
Amazon does have a big offering doing this. It's Temu and Shein are and TikTok as well, TikTok shops. Etsy, I don't think so. I think Etsy's much more, hopefully made by your grandma and stuff like that. But yeah, those other ones for sure.
When does the impact here, first off, let me ask you this. From the companies that you deal with, how are they changing operations, if at all? And for the person who's sitting here watching this tonight, when do they start to feel the trickle-down effects from all this?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing here was how fast it hit. I mean, this executive order just came out a couple of days ago and implemented today. In the past, when the Trump administration and the Biden administration, when they've done new duties on China, they usually gave at least 1 month's notice. So that's pretty short frame for the government itself to be able to get their systems up and working. All reports out of CBP today are that the systems are working as planned, that they are now no longer allowing de minimis to clear. What you've seen is a lot of companies move this was not like totally unforeseen.
Right. Trump had been talking about it out on the campaign trail for months.
Yeah. And the new duties from China, everyone's seen it coming. I don't think it's the end of it either, by the way. The Treasury Secretary has until April 1st to put in a formal recommendation and a report for Trump, for the president on China trade. So I would expect more ratcheting up of barriers to trade there. What brands are doing in response? Some of them are pulling in goods early. You're going to see more and more if you can get goods in before the duties hit. You'll see a scramble to do that. They're also going to start to relocate fulfillment centers into the United States. If you can no longer flow the goods in from overseas, you're going to want to position that inventory closer to customers so you can get faster shipping times, a better customer experience. So you'll see those jobs start to come back to the United States, and that is as it's designed.
I was looking at the cost to fly goods from Europe to North America, and it's up a handful of a percent. And I guess that's probably part of the front running that you talked about, because the president has talked about possible European tariffs on the EU. What happens if the president goes down that route?
Yeah, I mean, and we saw it with Canada and Mexico that, if those are our two biggest trading partners and right here in the North American continent, and if those two are up for potential tariffs, then I don't think anybody feels like they're safe and they won't see tariffs. Trump did say last week in a sort of off-the-cuff statement that he expects to put tariffs on the EU too. So I think brands should just expect that might be the new normal. It is hard to run a supply chain in a world where you can't really plan for these things. And so the name of the game right now is agility. It's watching the news constantly, paying attention to statements out of the White House, out of the various regulatory agencies, and being ready for whatever might happen. It's going to be the winner in all of this is going to be whoever's nimble. You can't outrun the bear, but you can outrun your slowest friend. And I think that's going to be kind of the name of the game. If you can be faster than your competitor to respond to these things, you may be able to create competitive advantage for yourself.
Interesting. Let me leave you with this, Ryan. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you used to live in Panama.
I don't know about that.
Okay. So let me ask you this. The Panama Canal, and the president, shipping in the air and by vessel as well as anyone in the world, right? The president's taken up the Panama Canal issue. Why do you think he's doing that, and is he right to do so in your view?
Well, that's a big geopolitical thing that's sort of above my pay grade on some level. Panama Canal is obviously incredibly important for U.S. trade. Most U.S. trade, most of the goods flowing through the Panama Canal are U.S. trade. It's incredibly important for our Navy to be able to maintain a much smaller fleet because we can rapidly move ships between the two oceans. So it's a very strategic asset for the United States. Several of the ports there are run by Chinese companies. So this is something as a national security interest that's important for the United States. And it was owned by the United States. It was operated actually right here in San Francisco out of the Presidio until it was handed back to Panama. So there's this major strategic interest in the United States. What exactly he wants to what concessions he's looking for, that's way above my pay grade. Right. I'm not privy.
All right, we'll leave it there. Ryan Peterson is the CEO of Flexport. A look into how companies are trying to navigate, no pun intended, the new world and when it could all flow down to consumers. Ryan, hope to talk to you again soon. Thank you so much. Appreciate the time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
You got it. All right. Still to come here on the Hill. We thought this was happening soon. All the major players except for two are in the room. When the president speaks and the Israeli prime minister speaks, we'll take you there live. But first, on the other side of the break, the news with the rest of the panel here on the Hill. Inside the East Room of the White House, President Trump, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, set to speak to the media, really to the country, to the Middle East and the world at large, as those two have been together for about 2.5 hours now. When that happens, we will take you there live. But first, a live look at Capitol Hill, where the Senate will vote any moment now, probably in the next 15 minutes, half an hour or so, on Pam Bondi's nomination to become the next U.S. Attorney General. The Senate reaching an agreement to vote on Bondi at 7 o'clock rather than the overnight hours, which was the plan earlier today. Now, no date has been set yet for when the Senate will vote on whether Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard will lead the Department of Health and Human Services and the National Intelligence Director, respectively. Full panel here with me now, Mick Mulvaney, Dan Cannon, and you know these two by now. Also, Roma Daravi, former Trump White House Deputy Director of Strategic Communications. Brad Howard is a Democratic strategist. Hello to you all. We continue to await this press conference here, but some big news in its own right. Roma, RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard getting through the first phase of confirmation hearings. Is it the belief that when a full Senate vote comes, those two become the Director of Health and Human Services and the Director of National Intelligence?
Well, they should, and that's what the American people voted for. Look, it's very clear that we did not want more of the same, we being the American people, and so although this process has been, a tough one for some of the contendants, some of the nominees, they will come through in the end. And I think, one thing that people are not talking about is the amount of grassroots support that you're getting for RFK Jr. Phones are blowing up on Capitol Hill with suburban moms calling to ensure that their member is going to vote in favor of him because they liked what he had to say on the campaign trail with President Trump. They liked the fact that he's going to clean up our food. And Tulsi Gabbard has clearly proven herself time and time again. So
there were questions, though, about
her
not saying that if Edward Snowden, is a traitor or not. Right, and that
a lot of the things that our nominees are not addressing, they feel is ridiculous. And that's the way that President Trump has dealt with many of the things that have come up over the past few years. It's asked and answered, and beyond that, if it's not, it's because it's a ridiculous assertion to ask.
I think Brad's head is good.
I think she's right about RFK. I think he has a following, and I think that's part of the reason why I think a lot of Republican senators are going to end up supporting him. And yes, and I think he's going to go through fine. Tulsi Gabbard got some momentum with Susan Collins coming out in favor of her. That was a big one. I think there's the same number of members on the Senate Intel Committee. She's got to get, so she can't lose a single vote there. That one's the most troubling, I think, to everyone, including a lot of folks in the national security apparatus, and not just Democrats. Republicans have some problems with Tulsi Gabbard, mainly because she can't even declare Edward Snowden a traitor, which he very clearly was, and that was a massive intelligence failure for the American people, an embarrassing moment, too, as well. So, to your point, American people voted for the president, yes, but they did not vote for these people, and the Constitution does not say the president gets whoever he wants. The Constitution says he gets to nominate and the Senate gets to confirm. That process is playing out. These Republican senators are going to have to own these votes, so if something goes wrong, it is on them as well.
What does it say, though, that if they get through, let's operate under the assumption of if, because it seems like moving, if/when, right, because it's moving in that direction. The president then would get just about every single one of his top picks in, except for Matt Gaetz.
Right. Yeah, I think it's right. And I do think RFK Jr. got through. He was not good in those hearings. And if you watch Bill Cassidy in finance and then Bill Cassidy the next day, Bill Cassidy was not impressed with his answers on Medicaid or Medicare. He was not impressed with his answers on abortion. And then there were lots of questions on mifepristone, which came up and RFK answered, I think, very poorly. But I think the pressure of the campaign on Cassidy, and I think a primary campaign threat
funded by Musk
moved him. I don't think he wanted to vote for this guy. If Cassidy had been the deciding vote, I think Murkowski, I think Collins, I think McConnell go the other way, and he's tubed. Cassidy was a linchpin, but they got him.
Two different ones to you. What does it say about the initial question, Trump, the president? getting for the most part, all of his folks through, it appears. But also to what Dan and Brad say, when you talk to your old colleagues up on Capitol Hill, are they worried about getting primaried if they cross Musk?
Yes.
Cross Musk. But they won't say that publicly.
You could have stopped the sentence, are they worried about getting primaried?
Okay.
Yes, that applies to everybody in this building behind us.
But what about the influence now that Musk?
Sure, because it's money. It's a large amount of... Look, here's how I look at it. I've been through this process, and generally speaking, if you get out of committee, you're going to pass on the floor. But it's not automatic, okay? Right. I had a commitment from a senator. I can talk about it now because he's dead. John McCain gave me his word he would vote for me on the floor and then changed his mind, okay? And instead of winning 52-48, I won 51-49. There still might be some drama here. Again, typically you get out, the fight is in the committee because those are the members who care the most about that particular nominee. But it doesn't mean that everybody that we haven't been talking about is going to fall into place automatically.
And McConnell's not sharing how he's voting ahead of these votes either.
And that's a great point because he came out of the weeds on Hegseth.
Yeah.
But a win is a win, right? I mean, yes. Even someone as wonderful as you, Mick, had a tight win.
Anything
and so
more
I
than
think
one is just bragging. I get it.
You know,
right.
Donald Trump has had a lot of wins lately. I think these are going to be a couple more on his list.
All right. Meantime, as Elon Musk and Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency, come under attack, the president is complimenting the work that they've done so far.
Look, he's done a great job. Look at all the fraud that he's found in this U.S. AID. It's a disaster what the people, radical left lunatics.
And just a little while ago, Democrats held a press conference of their own, launching concerns.
This is not Elon Musk's country. This is not Trump's country. This is our country. Elon Musk is seizing power from the American people. We are here to fight back.
Live look at the East Room, the President of the United States, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
That's a lot of press. Congratulations. You bring them out. You really bring them out. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu back to the White House. It's a wonderful feeling and a wonderful event. We had fantastic talks. And thank you very much with your staff. He's the first foreign head of state to visit during our administration, and Bibi, I want to say it's an honor to have you with us. Over the past 4 years, the U.S. and the Israeli alliance has been tested more than any time in history. But the bonds of friendship and affection between the American and Israeli people have endured for generations, and they are absolutely unbreakable. They are unbreakable. I'm confident that under our leadership, the cherished alliance between our two countries will soon be stronger than ever. We had a great relationship. We had great victories together 4 years ago. Not so many victories over the past 4 years, however. In my first term, Prime Minister and I forged a tremendously successful partnership that brought peace and stability to the Middle East like it hadn't seen in decades. Together, we defeated ISIS. We ended the disastrous Iran nuclear deal, one of the worst deals ever made, by the way, and imposed the toughest ever sanctions on the Iranian regime. We starved Hamas and Iran's other terrorist proxies, and we starved them like they had never seen before. Resources and support disappeared for them. I recognized Israel's capital, opened the American embassy in Jerusalem, and got it built, by the way. Built it too, just not only designated it, but got it built at a price that nobody's seen for 40 years. We got it built. It's beautiful, all Jerusalem stone, right from nearby, and it's something that's very special. And recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights, something that they talked about for 70 years, and they weren't able to get it, and I got it. And with the historic Abraham Accord, something that was really an achievement that was, I think, going to become more and more important because we achieved the most significant Middle East peace agreements in half a century, but the Abraham Accords in particular. And I really believe that many countries will soon be joining this amazing peace and economic development transaction. It really is a big economic development transaction. I think we're going to have a lot of people signing up very quickly. Unfortunately, for 4 years, nobody signed up. Nobody did anything for 4 years except in the negative. Unfortunately, the weakness and incompetence of those years, those past 4 years, the grave damage around the globe that was done, including in the Middle East, grave damage all over the globe. The horrors of October 7th would never have happened if I were president. The Ukraine and Russia disaster would never have happened if I were president. Over the past 16 months, Israel has endured a sustained, aggressive, and murderous assault on every front, but they fought back bravely. You see that and you know that. What we have witnessed is an all-out attack on the very existence of a Jewish state in the Jewish homeland. The Israelis have stood strong and united in the face of an enemy that has kidnapped, tortured, raped, and slaughtered innocent men, women, children, and even little babies. I want to salute the Israeli people for meeting this trial with courage and determination and unflinching resolve. They have been strong. In our meetings today, the Prime Minister and I focused on the future, discussing how we can work together to ensure Hamas is eliminated and ultimately restore peace to a very troubled region. It's been troubled, but what's happened in the last 4 years has not been good. I want to thank Prime Minister Netanyahu for working closely with my transition team, the Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, who's here somewhere. Steve? Stand up, Steve, please. What a job you've done. What a good job you've done. Proud of you. Done a fantastic job. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. Thank you, Mike, for working so well with us. Thank you. We have, in addition, Marco Rubio, who is on the phone right now, listening to every single word that we say, and he's going to be great. And Pete, congratulations. And Scott, congratulations. I see you're here. And Caroline's been doing a great job. She's really probably talked about more than anybody here. She's done a fantastic job, and thank you very much, Caroline. We're proud of you. But we'll only be satisfied when all of these problems are solved, and we have the team to solve them, and that's going to happen. And it's going to happen, I think, very quickly. I also strongly believe that the Gaza Strip, which has been a symbol of death and destruction for so many decades and so bad for the people anywhere near it, and especially those who live there, and frankly, who's been really very unlucky. It's been very unlucky. It's been an unlucky place for a long time. Being in its presence just has not been good, and it should not go through a process of rebuilding and occupation by the same people that have really stood there and fought for it and lived there and died there and lived a miserable existence there. Instead, we should go to other countries of interest with humanitarian hearts, and there are many of them that want to do this, and build various domains that will ultimately be occupied by the 1.8 million Palestinians living in Gaza, ending the death and destruction and, frankly, bad luck. This can be paid for by neighboring countries of great wealth. It could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 12. It could be numerous sites, or it could be one large site. But the people will be able to live in comfort and peace, and we'll make sure something really spectacular is done. They're going to have peace. They're not going to be shot at and killed and destroyed like this civilization of wonderful people has had to endure. The only reason the Palestinians want to go back to Gaza is they have no alternative. It's right now a demolition site. This is just a demolition site. Virtually every building is down. They're living under fallen concrete that's very dangerous and very precarious. They instead can occupy all of a beautiful area with homes and safety, and they can live out their lives in peace and harmony instead of having to go back and do it again. The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area. Do a real job, do something different. Just can't go back. If you go back, it's going to end up the same way it has for 100 years. I'm hopeful that this ceasefire could be the beginning of a larger and more enduring peace that will end the bloodshed and killing once and for all. With the same goal in mind, my administration has been moving quickly to restore trust in the alliance and rebuild American strength throughout the region. And we've really done that. We're a respected nation again. A lot's happened in the last couple of weeks. We are actually a very respected nation again. I ended the last administration's de facto arms embargo on over $1 billion in military assistance for Israel. And I'm also pleased to announce that this afternoon the United States withdrew from the anti-Semitic UN Human Rights Council and ended all of the support for the UN Relief and Works Agency, which funneled money to Hamas and which was very disloyal to humanity. Today, I also took action to restore a maximum pressure policy on the Iranian regime, and we will once again enforce the most aggressive possible sanctions, drive Iranian oil exports to zero, and diminish the regime's capacity to fund terror throughout the region and throughout the world. We had no threat when I left office. Iran was not able to sell oil. Nobody was buying oil because I said, don't buy it. If you buy it, you're not doing any business with the United States. And Hamas was not being funded. Hezbollah was not being funded. Nobody was being funded. There would never have been an October 7th. 2 weeks ago, I once again designated the Houthis as a terrorist organization. They're trying to destroy world shipping lanes, and that's not going to happen. And over the weekend, I ordered airstrikes against senior ISIS leaders hiding in